Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh. Pitafi. Viewers, usually this slot is occupied by Hamid. Today she is not available, so I'm going to host this program today as well. And today we are going to talk about Pakistan's economy. It is important because there are many moving parts in our economy. On one side, we have seen an increase, substantial increase actually, in imports. And that actually gives you impression that our current account deficit might plunge again. On the other side, we have seen weakening rupee against dollar. And then whatever is going on in Afghanistan is also interesting because that also creates a kind of vacuum, economic vacuum in the region. It might impact Pakistan as well. Finally, FATF is soon going to reconsider Pakistan's candidature for whitelist. So we are going to talk about all these matters today and try to understand in which direction our economy is moving. We are going to do that. Before I introduce the panel, our team has made a report for you. Let us watch that, and then we are going to come to the panel. Let's watch it.
The Pakistani rupee hit a new one-year low at rupees 166.87 against the US dollar in the interbank market as demand for the foreign currency remained high compared to supply in the country. Pakistan's import payments were significantly higher compared to export earnings. The falling rupee is just rupees 0.56 shy of the all-time low of rupees 167.43, which hit a year ago on August 27, 2020. With a fresh drop of rupees 0.49, the rupee has lost 6% since the start of current fiscal year on July 1st, 2021, according to the State Bank of Pakistan's data. The currency has maintained its downturn after touching a 22-month high of rupees 152.27 in May 2021, losing a cumulative 9.59% in the past 3 months. The market had expected the rupee to gain strong support from a boost in the country's foreign currency reserves to an all-time high of $20.4 billion on August 24th in the wake of the receipt of $2.75 billion from the International Monetary Fund. The inflows, which boosted the foreign currency reserves by 16%, failed to extend support to the weakening rupee. Accordingly, the government has decided to let the market-based flexible rupee-dollar exchange rate mechanism determine the value of the rupee against the US dollar, keeping in view the demand and supply of foreign currency in the interbank market. The interbank market mostly meets demand for import payments through receipts of export earnings and workers' remittances sent home by overseas Pakistanis. The real effective exchange rate, the country's cost of external trade, has improved back to 98 points on the index in July after losing to over 102 points a couple of months ago, suggesting that the rupee is trading around fair values these days and there is left hardly any space to drop furthermore.
Right. So now I have to actually introduce the panel, and then there are cards also that I'm going to read, but let me introduce the panel first. Joining me in the studio is Amir Zafar Dutani Saab, who's president of Re-Energia, and he is a lifelong and very committed development economist. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Mind you, I'm not introducing the other part of your career, that is poetry and writing as well. Someday, perhaps we can do that too. And next to him is Fahim Sardar Saab, who is senior policy specialist and economist, and is associated with one of premier institutions of Pakistan. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Dr. Waqar Ahmed also joins us, but on Skype. He is Joint Executive Director, SDPI, Sustainable Development Policy Institute. Let me thank Dr. Waqar also. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. So while I was announcing, I was told that I don't have to read any cards, and I can start with the first question. And Amir Dutani sir, let me ask you about the currency. What exactly is going on? Why is the rupee weakening so quickly?
Well, thank you very much. You know, with Waqar on the other side, I think this is an area that he covers much better. But let me posit my. I think in one word, I mean, looking at both the supply demand side, I think there's an auto correction happening because of the rise of the imports, and I think that The other thing we also know is that there's a lot of heating up, consumption is increasing in the economy.
Okay.
And I think this, because of the fair value trade, as you saw the real at 98, I think that this is not really something to bemoan, but it's something to say for a change the market is working.
Okay.
Right? And I think the important side, which I was trying to explain 2 days ago in an Urdu show, was that...
I was not there.
So no, you were absolutely not there. But basically the idea being that we need to be very aware that instead of tackling tariffs, border tariffs, let the currency do what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
So it will play a very key role. Let the
currency
market
touch the floor?
Well, it's not a floor. You know, there is no floor in a currency. Let me be very straightforward. I've seen currencies go by. Yeah, so I mean, technically speaking, I think...
Let the currency plunge.
I'm not saying let the currency plunge. I said let the currency come to the fair market value. When it was rising, I mean, this is, I think, a very sad place to start thinking of currency as a lower value, higher value. Let me give you a misnomer. I mean, as of 15th August...
What is the market value, in your view?
In my view, it is exactly where it should be. I mean, it should be 170 and we are at 160 something.
Okay. Yeah. So there is a difference of 10, right?
You saw in your own report, 98, yeah. So,
yeah.
So, but my point is very simple. Look, I mean, I think in a way the depreciation of the currency heralds and, you know, it's good because I think there was a meeting last week about, you know, oh, the imports are rising. I think this rise in the price of the dollar will automatically help with some of the correction there. And I don't think we should be looking at any extreme measures on curbing imports immediately, because if you look at the composition of imports that are rising, I mean, it's primarily on inputs and intermediaries, or inputs for construction and intermediaries on some of the textile sector.
Right. That is important. Let me bring in Fahim Sardar Saab as well. Fahim Sardar Saab, same question. Actually, thanks to Amir Saab, now you have to answer 2 questions. One currency, the other imports. Go.
Okay. Firstly, I am basically, if the rupee rose, it rose gradually. If it is falling, it's falling very quickly. Yeah. There's a difference. So since I'm from the market, so I mean, the behavior is totally different. So I mean, my personal opinion is that on one hand, the government has been very effectively managing currency. The currency was let free, perhaps too free. No country allows that.
What is too free?
Too free is when you don't intervene, like it is right now.
So it is free, right?
Well, there is no free currency on earth.
Okay.
No dollar, no euro, no ruble. Nothing is left to market forces. You have to have a band in which you allow things to trade, because anything beyond that band is basically unnatural. I'm not saying stifle demand or supply, because right now what's happening is there are 2 things which one of which no one is talking about. People are talking about the fall in, let's say, the rupee in a span of 4 months. That's just above 1 quarter. But nobody's talking about speculation. There's a lot of speculation going on as well. And the state bank, the government have tried very hard and I think very effectively to have a managed currency regime, which was quite good actually. You had the rupee come, it went down to 169, I remember, went up to 151.
Okay.
Very gradually, very slowly, very, you know, bit by bit. So that's pretty natural. But now all of a sudden you see there might be some imports, absolutely, there might be some payments, but you're getting inflows as well. So being from the market, I mean, my market experience is not allowing me to look in any other direction. That you have this a sufficient supply, which should actually cater for a lot of the gaps. So there is that huge element that gremlin in the system, which is speculation. Right. Because now people might be hoarding up rupees, dollars once again. They started dumping dollars a year ago. So what I'm trying to say is that the state bank is trying, but perhaps the state bank is waiting for an automatic reverse correction. Okay. Going in the opposite direction, because you don't just let, I want to be very clear, no currency on earth is allowed a free fall, which, you know, going back to what you asked.
And I'm not debating any currency. We are talking about the currency that actually I use for my salary and everything, right? But the concern at this moment is, while you're saying that there shouldn't be any interference, right? But on the other side, your approach seems to be pro policy, state policy, that there have to be some instruments. Am I right in assuming this?
Well, partially not. It's the same thing. The policy has to be there to intervene. This is a strategic issue as well. Okay. You cannot just let a currency go beyond a certain point.
What is that certain point right now?
Now,
how is it determined?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a very good question, and this ranges from time to time, and it's a dynamic.
Yeah.
With time, there are various models you can use. The VAR system, you can create bands. It depends on.
You're a very soft-spoken man, and if you're going to continue in the same tone,
okay,
I'll have to make you angry so that you can speak louder.
You should see me working. Okay. So the point is, what we need to be very clear about is that it has to be a government policy to sort of manage your currency a little bit. You don't let the car go off the road.
Right. With your permission, let me go to Dr. Bakar. Dr. Bakar, you have been listening to the commentary that is going on. I understand, reading your book, that you are not that much in favor of any kind of interference in the market. But we are seeing currency, and with due respect, the currency keeps falling. Now it is at the lowest in the entire year. What do you make of it, and what do you think is the solution, or should it continue the way it is?
Thank you, Farrukh Saab. I think that it won't be continuing the way it is, and there will be a point when, of course, the central bank intervenes. That's what most central banks do. Perhaps they have made their own autonomous assessment that this is not the time to intervene as yet. But having said, though, I still believe that both my esteemed panelists, Amir Saab and Fahim Saab, they've rightly, of course, explained the mechanics. But somebody on the government's end or somebody on the central bank end has to really play a very has to be very articulate in communicating what is going on here, because unless the central bank plays a very good communications role over here, this is going to create a lot of uncertainty in the market for a common person, or for example, the fixed income group in the economy, who, for example, is thinking that this is going to create a lot of inflation for them. So that mechanics which we are discussing is not known to that common person who's really going into that uncertainty. The uncertainty for now is being driven, of course, by two or three things. One is that, yes, you are constructively trying to engage with IMF, and you certainly cannot annoy the IMF at this point if you're engaging with them by showing that you're intervening in the market. In fact, this was a prior condition when you entered into the IMF agreement, that you will allow the market forces to determine the currency's value. Second, of course, is that you have opened up the economy. And of course, there are voices within the cabinet that do not want the economy to sort of shut down, even if there are lockdowns, micro or smart lockdowns happening, right, due to which you are going to continuously see a rising import demand in the economy, which, of course, the state bank wants to control using methods such as the exchange rate, which would be less intrusive.
Right. Dr. Saab, are you saying that there are voices that actually want consumption to go on while production can wait?
I mean, if I am allowed an independent view, that's right. And this is what segments in the cabinet have been suggesting in their interviews on the media, that economy should be opened up. Curbs on the imports shouldn't be there the way they were, for example, a year and a half back. Even in the face of rising oil prices or national commodity prices, which they're very cognizant of, they still are willing to give that room to rising import expenditure, which could be really detrimental for us. You also have pressure on the rupee coming up because travel is opening up, and you would be needing more and more foreign exchange for, of course, travel and other operations as well, to accommodate them as well. But yes, there are voices who are willing to go for a much more expansionary mode.
So that is also very interesting, Ahmed Dotani Saab, that On one side, we are in IMF's program, and we have to actually promise a fiscal belt tightening, and we have to ensure that there is macroeconomic stabilization. On the other side, there is this desire, pent-up desire, to immediately rush for growth. And in that, and in view of COVID and all those pressures that are there, we end up doing many things that might be actually cancelling each other out. Is it true?
Yeah, so I mean, my view is somewhere between, as Mr. Sardar's and Waqar's. I think it's more leaning towards Waqar because, to be very honest, the problem, and look at this show, I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about inputs, and we're talking about basically tools that we use, but we're not talking about outcomes. When did the state... No, I'm saying about the government. When I say we, meaning, I'm just looking at the government.
So that's why I said it.
Sorry. So basically the thing is that if we think about outcomes, well, let's ask ourselves, do we want a higher savings rate? Do we want to curb consumption? Do we have a structure on what kind of consumption we want to curb? Do we want industrial diversification? Do we want new industry to come up? Do we want, for example, imports to be curbed simply outright? Or do we have a selective approach given that we want to diversify our export basket?
I'm so glad that you have asked at least 7 or 8 questions. Now you are going to ask everyone, answer every one.
No. So you see, the answer lies in a total chaos. You have a finance minister who has a certain strategy, which is a banker's strategy. You have a trade and commerce SAPM or whatever, I mean, who are basically talking about diversification, diversification of the industry and our industrial base, and thereby also the exports, right? Now, I think ultimately what is happening right now in Pakistan, the two things that we are sure about. Number one, we have no clue what the size of our economy is, and there have been proponents of rebasing that, like me, I don't know if Waqar wants that, I don't know if Sardar wants this, but to be very honest, rebasing has to be done. I'll tell you why. Because when you go out on certain days, or even right now, the amount of consumption despite a pandemic, the amount of traffic despite a pandemic, not just in Islamabad or in the Twin Cities, but all the way up to the north, in Khunjarab, you go down to Bahawalpur, there is no space on the roads. So where is this happening? How is this? What's fueling this? So I'll tell you what's fueling this. What's fueling this is multiple sources of income, the fact that you've had a bumper crop, the fact that you've opened up the construction because the LSM is increasing, the LSM also increasing because you have more money to spend, therefore you are doing it. The other thing is the government's also padded the lowest part of the economy through the SARS program and the pandemic inputs. If you structurally look at the overall economy and stop thinking and talking about this very narrow view on exchange rate management, I mean, I think that is what is missing in the discussion here.
No, with due respect, we just started the discussion and it was second question, but we were going to talk about those things as well. My humble submission, by the way, is that while we are talking about the rosy picture that you just spoke about.
No, it's not rosy.
No, somebody is consuming, so that means that economy must be growing somewhere. So what on earth is the problem with fiscal deficit? Why does it not get under control?
No, I think why do we need to control the fiscal deficit? You see, at some point, like Waqar said, I am in favor of a couple of years of just outright free economic growth. I'm actually, in this last budget, they went down to 0 tariffs on a few raw materials. I think we should basically bring our weighted average to average down to about 5% on everything. And just see what happens. You know, you are the government. Just watch and see what happens. Now you said, if your game is, just because the electric understands 27 billions of reserves, is that what you're going to do? I mean, so stop doing election year economics and Daronomics and start thinking with like a brave government. Because that's what Naya Pakistan was supposed to be all about.
Right. On one side, you're talking about easing tariffs and taking care of that side. On the other side, you're saying that the government should be courageous. How is the government courageous if it is not in election mode and if it doesn't actually take care of the deficit?
Okay, now this is the political economy. I'm sorry, I mean, I think maybe again Sardar may have a very different view on this. But the government is, number one, showing some courage. This raw material, 0%, they are taking some steps, which shows as a government. The recent change, by the way, in the way the polls are turning out. You see, there was this like 6 months ago, some PMLN, PPP, some things changing. But now, outright, everywhere that these guys are going, they're winning all the by-elections, right? Now there's going to Punjab local body elections that they are now, which shows you the courage. So let's marry that courage with the economy and let the good times roll for a while.
Courage for liberalization or courage for reform?
No, okay, there is one thing, structural reform of the economy, which this government has done nothing on. We know that.
And you want the government to do something about it?
So basically the thing is, if the government does this opening, it will be forced to then tackle the structural issues, right? If it keeps on with Daronomics and simple tiggly-wiggly management of little inputs and tools, then the government is never going to look at, I mean, look at what have they done with any of the large PSCs? Nothing.
Yeah, problem is that usually reform and growth don't go hand in hand.
Oh, absolutely not.
So, which one are
you saying? No, I'm telling you that this is one opportunity where, by opening up the economy, because they are going to suffer. They are going to then have to tackle things like what's happening with the power sector debt. They're going to look at the gas sector. They're going to look at the pension bill. But an open, free economy will help solve these problems and also highlight them more. So I actually am saying that.
Right. Fahim said that's up. You want to comment on that?
On which part?
The entirety of it. You have to be simultaneously pro-growth and open up the economy, and then you have to reform as well.
I think what we understand Amir Saab is saying is basically that you let the economy fit itself into the right mold. And then it sort of grows in a natural manner. We agree on that.
What does that mean actually?
That means basically
what does that entail? More consumption?
Okay, no. You see, what we're doing is we're having a mutually exclusive discussion. That's not the way it is.
No, I'm just trying to understand what is being said.
Okay, when you let an economy go free, you're basically letting the market forces determine the direction, the quantum, the viability and the sustainability. You know? Now,
that means removal of all subsidies from electricity as well?
Well, it heads in that direction, but I mean, let's not go that far.
Why not?
Because there is no, there's always a mix and match that you have to do in economics. That's how you get the right result.
See,
you have to create an alloy.
When you start off, it sounds like you're agreeing with him. And very quietly you change the direction and start actually talking about managing things.
I agree with some of the things that my colleague has very lucidly put out, but I'm just trying to say that the government is trying to have a managed economy, not a free economy, not a controlled economy. It's somewhere in between.
Yeah. And what is your predilection?
I think my view is more towards a managed economy, a little bit towards the free side, but the problem here is
we started have the best of both worlds.
Of course you can. This is economics. You can have anything you want. 1 + 1 is what I want it to be. No. That's how I got a job once. 1 + 1 is what I want it to be.
No, but so simple economics, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Actually, you can. You can if you plan it out.
Actually,
actually you can. I mean, if you plan it out. Right now, Pakistan is sitting on some assets, some gold mines, which we're not really looking at.
Name them.
Your domestic cash, which is still not in the market. Your taxation capacity, which we're not looking at.
Potential is not a reality though.
No, but it is there. You see, it's right there. The point is, if
you haven't been able to actually factor it in for 73 years, do we have a magic wand to do it now?
You have someone talking about it, so I mean, we're trying to push it in that direction. So let's start the Harry Potter story. So the point is...
For 20 years I've been hearing this.
The point is, if you have a rupee, which if the rupee had fallen, let's say 2% in 4 months, I would not have reacted. But now 4% is heading towards 5%. So being, I was once a market practitioner, so there you have to apply the brakes very quickly because there is a psychology of the market which you must control. You do not necessarily have to control imports or exports, you have to control the psychology. Having said that, right now the Pakistan...
Since you brought up psychology, can I make an assumption?
Yeah, sure.
You keep on going back to your market days, and now you're in the part of the policy structure. Is there a possibility that your two experiences are clashing while you're answering it?
No, those two experiences are actually...
Complementing each other?
It's actually helping me. What I can clearly see is that a policy is not mutually exclusive. You see, when you make a policy, it is not necessarily left or right. You can have a mix of both, provided you structure it properly.
Okay.
Provided you implemented it properly. Right now, what Pakistan needs is what the government was doing, gradually opening up the economy. There was nothing wrong with that. Suddenly, there's a blip on the rupee. There's a blip. And I mean, my market sense is tingling. You see, I know there is speculation going on.
Yeah.
And if you subtract that, suddenly you have like 7-8 rupees back in the rupee. That's my market sense talking.
See, again, I understand that the government shouldn't be introducing distortions. But on the other side, you are talking about the inbuilt distortions, like speculation. People start hoarding dollar.
Speculation is part of the market. There's nothing wrong with that.
To this extent, where your stock market is usually,
in
when
every
investor goes,
in every market on earth, if you allow speculation, you have to allow rules to prevail as well.
Yeah.
Market trading rules. For example, when the British pound was being hammered by George Soros, the British laws, he had evaded the British laws so magically. That's how he made £1 billion in, I think, 2 weeks or something. And he had brought the Bank of England on to its knees. What I'm trying to clarify or share here is that right now, if the rupee is taking a fast slide, I wouldn't call it a plunge. Our laws, our trading laws have to come into play and have to see who is basically shorting the rupee.
All right. Bear in mind that we have, although we still are talking about monetary policy, but we have slightly moved further than that. And now we are talking also about the fiscal policy, right?
Absolutely.
So let me go back to Dr. Waqar. Dr. Waqar Sahab, market should be opened up. That is Hamid Tutani Sahab's point of view. It should be managed, but within a limit. That is Fahim Sardar Sahab's point of view. Your take, sir?
Yes, thank you. I think for now, there seems to be a consensus at the government level that they do not want to sound like or look like somebody who's intervening too much into the markets, despite of the fact that the signals which have come out after the wheat report or the sugar report were quite stringent, but still the government has refrained from it, which to a large extent is good, is decent. I think my current concern is that the way some of the leading institutions of economic governance are sort of interacting with the market, that is probably not the right way to do. So I want to
identify those institutions, sir? Can you identify those institutions?
Sir. So the first one being the tax function. So the fact that I have lost count of the leadership, or rather the transition in the leadership at FBR, and the fact that market and FBR had to work together towards a really consensus-driven tax policy, reforms in tax administration, reforms in tax culture, that we are really losing that direction. Second, if one looks at the finance division, the planning division, the economic affairs division, you are again seeing a lack of forward-looking vision here. Planning Commission, of course, under the PTI leadership, had to come up with the 12th five-year plan. We haven't seen that come, right? Ministry of Commerce had to come up with the trade policy, which is the strategic trade policy framework. We haven't seen STPF come out. Likewise with the SME policy, which we have been hearing about for 2.5 years. So the market really hasn't got that forward-looking signal. Where is it that PTI, for example, wants Pakistan to be comes 2023 and even beyond? Governments, at least the federal government, has to think much beyond that. You have the donors telling us that the donor coordination mechanism at the federal level requires so much more refinement. You don't have a federal secretary in Economic Affairs Division for 2.5 months now. So I think these are all the issues that we tend to forget when sort of musical chairs are being played. I'm actually referring to the reshuffling of the economic leadership, at least on the fiscal side.
Yeah, Not only fiscal, especially you actually brought up FBR's changes as well. And we have seen multiple changes there. But here's the point. When I was listening to Ahmed Tutani Sahab, he was arguing for something very different. He said that we shouldn't be worrying about our fiscal deficit. We should be focusing on market forces actually define what is going to happen. In that situation, should we be worried about FBR at all?
Yes. So I think the government was allowed that room at least in 2020 and for most part of 2021, where due to the pressures of COVID, for example, on health as well as on economy and livelihoods, the government was allowed that room not to worry too much about the fiscal deficit. But then the government has come out and said that, look, we have surprised everyone with a V-shaped recovery. And now the IMF comes back to you or the donors come back to you and say that then perhaps if there is a recovery, then let's talk about fiscal discipline again. So I think the government really has to, again, I go back to that argument, has to be very articulate in its communication that whenever we are trying to celebrate very short-term wins, that celebration has to be nuanced in a manner that you would have several waves of COVID in which we have to put the fiscal deficit consideration aside due to the health, livelihood, and economy considerations.
Right. Ahmed Tutani sir, this bit about fiscal deficit staying there, if it increases, it's okay. That actually worries me because usually when I don't have money in my pocket to buy something, I don't actually incur more debt and buy it. On the other side, when you look at the fiscal policy, usually we are told that this much fiscal deficit is there, and we will try to bring it down through these means, these inflows, and then we actually end up talking more about that. Now, in this situation, if we are actually not going to increase or shore up the inflows, how does the economy function? Do we keep on borrowing?
Well, look, I mean, I'll be very honest with you. I'm a street economist, right? Yeah. So means that I'm an engineer turned economist who per force had to learn principles. I'm not as educated as our esteemed panelists in terms of economics, but I can tell you something what I feel the gut here. Pakistan structurally is not a definable economy as simple as, for example, you could say the US economy, right? Or, for example, even as for that matter, the UK. No, I'll tell you why. Take any indicator. You know, I always try to ask people, and this debate's been going on in many different fora, that, you know, despite everything, do you really think, let's talk of markets. Our friend here said he feels this tingling that the markets are speculating. I agree. But how deep is the Pakistani market? What difference would it make if half of it was wiped out? Half of KSC gets wiped out. You know what happens? 34 families lose half their worth, right? That's what it is. BAT controls 40% of whatever is traded there. They lose it, right? What difference? And this has, COVID has taught us this. So my point here.
34 families, but
this is a recent paper.
I might have parked my life saving also in the market.
Well, that's you, but how many Pakistanis do? Not many.
A lot of Pakistanis.
No, not a lot of Pakistanis. Look, let's put numbers there.
Okay.
So, okay, 77 million, 80 million households. Tell me how many households have their money in the stock market. Well, give me a number.
No,
I'm telling you this. It's a thin veneer of speculation.
Any idea? Only 34 families?
No. So this is a recent paper. You should, I mean, I'm sure you've heard about this. PI did this. We just picked up KSC and declared SECP, whoever's the director, etc. So 34 or 32 families, it turned out, instead of the 22, 23, basically control this, right? No. Let me explain this.
Yeah.
So we talk of banks. Right? I think one very good point made by, I think, Sardar is you missed that. Domestic cash, a lot of it is parked, right? It's like lying there. It's not being put into the banks, to be very honest, and the banks are happy making money by parking, you know, buying government capital.
And how much?
No, let me give you an example.
No.
Let me, you know, you always say explain.
Give me solutions.
Solution.
What to do with it?
Solution for
the cash that is there.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you increase a regulation or close markets to get that cash into the financial system, or do you let it go free? What do? You let it go free. right? So that people pick it up from underneath there, wherever they have it, like in the case of my brother, under the mattress, in case of some other friends in yeah. I mean, you know, they say we don't want to put it in the banking system. Let me give you an example. Kashmiri is very rich, right? Since we are both traded Kashmiri words before the program started. Kashmir has one of the richest diasporas in Pakistan, right? All the inflow, and I forget the numbers because we just did this report in 2019. So the banks collect all that, then they take it all to Karachi. Then if you look at total market lending and whether it's trade related or whatever, it's next to nothing, right? The money goes to Karachi or to their head offices, gets lent to the government, right? So these poor Kashmiri, the ones who are really trying to change their lives, get no advantage of putting their money in the bank. Right? Neither do they get credit. I mean, if I go there and say I want to open a shop, they say, please, can you mortgage or collateralize your mother's plot? Where in the hell of the world does that happen? So I think we are now coming into the micro side of the picture, but I think that's the reality. The reality of Pakistan's economy is in the micro nuts and bolts. So let's start talking about what happened to all the, you know, so the consumption, let's say the total growth, government said 3.9% growth. Okay. I said the same day, I mean, we were all on TV, I said,
you were sitting
once the reconciliation, exactly, I said, once reconciliation happens, you're going to get 5%, I mean, you know, or at least 4.95, right? I don't really care about the points, but genuinely, agriculture will come out higher. LSM will also, numbers will increase. Look, what is that saying?
No, hang on.
What happened? Somebody sold this.
Mashallah, like a free-flowing sea. You keep on moving and I have to actually bring you back to the old point, right? Domestic cash. You were talking about that. If it is not going to be regulated or if there is no way to actually use it to your advantage, then it is not an asset, is it?
Let me answer that, okay? My question back to you, because
don't ask me questions. Give me answer.
Or maybe to
I am the anchor.
You said that the domestic cash, which I liked. How do you bring it back into the system?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a solution right now. So I'm asking. My only solution is if you start freeing up the economy, you bring in.
I was really frightened. I'm glad that you have said this. I was worried that perhaps you're going to say we should go and do something like demonetization as it was done in India. And then I think of those long queues in front of ATMs that we saw in India, and now we see in America.
We have India as an example. We don't need to do that.
Yeah.
No, please. Please.
You introduced this element, so answer this.
We have India as an example of what not to do.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been saying this for 5 years when they used to call India incredible India, I used to say their economy is fake.
No, incredible is okay. Incredible is opposite of credible.
Exactly. So the point is that, something like demonetization, no, absolutely no. Right now what the government needs to do is just pull back this horse that has just going a little too fast, that's all. I'm talking about the rupee. And you said fiscal deficit and everything, it's all linked. The rupee is a function of the interest rate, of the fiscal deficit, of your exports, imports, your taxation. All of these things come together to define one number. Pull this back to get things back on track, which they were, by the way. The government...
How do you do that?
What you do is you intervene in the market.
How?
It's very simple. You start selling dollars.
Okay.
And the state bank has dollars, and we already have dollars, and that's what everybody's scratching their heads.
So you have to throw a dollar into the market.
You have to manage the market just a little bit. Okay.
So you'll have to inject more dollars.
Obviously, everyone does this. The Bank of Japan does this on a daily basis, perhaps twice a day.
Yeah. They have negative interest rate.
Yeah, and the Bank of England does this. America does this. We love to quote their examples. What does I hate to bring this up, but what does India?
Thank you very much for the answer. Otherwise, my problem was I was telling you that I'm thirsty, and you were pointing at the clouds that there's a lot of water up there. So
I was actually pointing towards the cupboard in which there are some bottles of water. You can just open it up and take it out.
I'm just trying to find
an analogy.
I'm going to come back to you.
Very quickly, because Dr. Vakar also has to, we'd like to hear what he has to say. What I'm trying to say is that pull this horse back onto the racing track.
Right. And my problem is while we are talking about the market actually defining everything, and with your caveat that there should be some interventions, right?
Yeah.
There are one aspect that he has just cancelled out, and that is speculation, that even if there is speculation in the market, it doesn't matter because that is such a small chunk of everything. But then mind goes to public sector enterprises. The kind of money they keep on just eating up.
1.3 trillion rupees.
Yeah.
It goes down.
And then circular debt.
Speculation on dollar and market were two different things. I'm sorry, I didn't want you to mix that. What I was saying is...
No. I'm not actually attributing that to you. I'm just bringing up one aspect. That there are such huge structural problems
there's one word
that you won't be able to
there's one
fix them.
word, I'll try to keep it short so that we can have Dr. Waqar. It's hemorrhages. Hemorrhages have to be plugged.
How?
You plug them by fixing the issue. You do not live with problems anymore. Okay. The government has a very clear policy on how to deal with.
There's a problem. There's a leak that is called a steel mill of Pakistan, right? Yeah. How do you plug it?
We sell it because that's what they're doing. They're trying to spin it off.
Who's going to sell it in this
The government.
After Iftikhar Chaudhry's intervention, who's going to sell it in this country?
Look, there's always a way, there's always a solution, and
okay, you mull over that possible solution? Okay. Let me actually go back to Dr. Waqar.
Do that.
Dr. Waqar, I understand market forces should be controlling everything. I'm for least intervention possible. But then we have these edifices of structural anomalies that are humongous. How do you reconcile the two, sir?
Farrukh sir, I think just taking lead from the discussion which we were having, there is still a lot of room for really expediting the debate at the parliamentary level, and of course dialogue with the judiciary as well on arriving at a consensus on what to do with, for example, the dozen key loss-making enterprises which you were referring to. Of course, the number runs into hundreds. You would have 122 enterprises which federal government would have to take care of, leaving aside the provincial PSCs. But still, there are around a dozen which one could really pick up case by case and really move forward. Now, our issue at this point is that, again, we are not being informed that whether we are taking that selective approach of, you named Pakistan Steel Mill, for example. Have we left the steel mill to the Privatization Commission, or steel mill is still being dealt by the Sarmaya-Pakistan board, the holding companies board which was created, you know. So that communication is still missing. Then you have the loss-making energy sector enterprises, the Gencos and Discos. We really don't know whether the sort of solution to their losses would be through the new electricity policy which has been given, or again that is something which is parked with Sarmaya Pakistan, or that is something which is being dealt by the Privatization Commission. So I think really one would be really benefit if there is a public dialogue, public sort of information relayed by the Finance Ministry on these very key institutions that we have. Moving forward, I think it's important that government's footprint is not just only, or the hemorrhage which Fahim Sardar Sahab was rightly talking about, is not just this 1 to 1.5 trillion rupees. The fact that government occupies probably one of the largest shares in the financial markets, you know, and crowds out the private sector, that is something which continues to happen even in COVID times. And that really expands government's footprint going forward.
Very quickly, I need you to actually elaborate two aspects that you just mentioned. The first one first, you were talking about the space within the parliament to debate these things. Are you hinting at the possibility of a charter of economy? Because immediately, the moment you say that we are going to sell state, steel mill of Pakistan, immediately People's Party is going to tell that it is a legacy of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and that it is humongous reason of pride in this country. So we are not going to do it. Then you talk about PIA. Then all of a sudden somebody will say it is your national carrier. You cannot actually disband it. So how do you actually reconcile that?
Yes, thank you, Farrukh Sahab. I think what you are talking about is really very important. I think we've taken a very important lens here. What I was referring to was one or two very small things. Number one, the standing committees need to play their role. They are really not holding the executive accountable the way they should, and really have a good follow-up mechanism around PSCs, or for that matter around other economic reforms related to state-owned enterprises, having a forward-looking vision for their disposal or public-private partnership or privatization for that matter. And second, even apart from standing committees not playing their role, the issue is that Speaker Saab and National Assembly and then Chairman Senate really has to set aside space and time in the agenda for the Parliament to discuss these issues. These shouldn't just be left to Finance Division alone. These require days-long discussion, in the Parliament.
Right. Waqar Sahab, I wanted to further ask you questions, but I'm just told that we have to conclude the program. We have run out of time. Dr. Waqar Ahmed, thank you very much, sir. Always great having you in the show. Same goes for you, Ahmed Zafar Turani Sahab. Always happy to have you here. Fahim Sardar Sahab, same here. Thank you very much for being part of the program. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. The questions about economy are here, many, and they are repeatedly being asked. Let's see when we get all the answers. My concern at this moment is that we are talking about the need for more debate. And in this country, if you know about our politics, we have been doing one thing quite regularly, and that is debate in 73 years. Why is it that the questions don't change, the debate never ends, and solutions are never found? This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.